the bill, an act relating to land improvement, fraud, and timber trespass. We had an introduction to this bill from the bill sponsor last week. Representative Holly came in and gave us sort of an overview of what the bill was about and why he thought it was necessary. So today we'll hear from Ledge Counsel. We'll see what the language in the bill actually looks like. But first, Mike's going to give us some background, some context so we have a better understanding of what we'll be looking at when we get to the bill itself. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is Mike Brady with the Office of Legislative Counsel. The issue of timber theft has been a significant issue in the forest community for a while. And there have been multiple efforts to address the issue and to try to end the practice and to address those people that are doing it. So theft of timber has been a crime for a while, but in 2015, the General Assembly added a provision about prohibiting a person from knowingly or recklessly cutting down, felling, destroying, removing, injuring, damaging, or carrying away any timber or forest product without permission from the owner of the timber or forest products, or defacing the mark of a log, forest products, or other valuable timber in a river or other place. And it has some significant penalties. It's a first offense is a 1 year, no more than 1 year imprisonment, and a fine of not more than $20,000, and second and subsequent is imprisonment of not more than 2 years, fine not more than $50,000. The problem with this statute is that no one wants to enforce it. The Department of Forests and Parks Recreation has very little enforcement authority. They really only have enforcement authority over the heavy cut law. They don't have authority to enforce crimes like this. The Attorney General and the state's attorney do have authority over any crime, and they have enforced some instances of timber theft, but not as many as have been occurring in the field. In addition, no law enforcement entity such as the state police or local police want anything to do with this. They argue that it's not their expertise, it's not something within their jurisdiction, even though if you are a level 3 law enforcement officer, you can enforce any crime. But state police say that this is not their jurisdiction. So you have a prohibition, but it's not enforced. In addition, it doesn't address a type of timber theft that can occur when a harvester enters into a contract with the landowner and the contract either has deceptive wording in it or is not honored fully by the harvester, or there isn't, or the harvester cuts down the wrong trees, quote unquote, or does not provide the landowner with the full value of the product that's been harvested. So when that happens, there's actually a civil action that's available to harmed individuals under 13 VSA 3606. But this means you have to go to court. This means you have to somehow value the timber that is lost. You have to either have a forester come in and assess what your damage was, or you use what are called the default values in 13 VSA 3602, which are actually pretty decent values, but you still need to go and do an assessment of your property and what was your damage. So it can be a burden to landowners to go to civil action. So, but there is another crime out there, and it's called home improvement fraud. And that crime is about when a person commits the offense of home improvement fraud. And home improvement fraud means fixing, replacing, remodeling, removing, renovating, altering, converting, etc. buildings or land, and it includes things like pruning and limbing of trees and removal of trees. So theoretically, you could use a home improvement fraud claim against a person engaged in timber theft, especially when you look under subsection B, when a person fails to perform the contract or agreement in whole or in part, or when the owner requests performance or to refund payment or comply with the plan for completion of the work. So maybe the attorney general or state's attorney could bring a home improvement fraud claim for timber theft, but it's not very clear how that would apply. So there you have timber theft. It doesn't cover really all of the activities that might actually constitute timber theft, and it's not being enforced as vigorously as it could be. And you have home improvement fraud, which the AG and state's attorneys theoretically could bring, but it's not entirely clear, and it's not specific to the type of activities common to timber theft. So that leads you to the bill. And so page 614 does 4 major, or 3 to 4 major things. It amends the home improvement fraud statute to clarify that it includes land improvement fraud, and land improvement fraud is defined to include activities that could constitute timber theft. It amends the timber trespass law to require a financial surety, a bond, for anyone who's convicted of timber trespass or subject to civil action if they want to continue to engage in timber harvesting. And then 3, it authorizes the seizure of equipment used in violation of the timber trespass law or in violation of home improvement, land improvement. That means they can take your equipment, your harvesting equipment, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, which the bank might have a mortgage in, which is why the banking association is here, and hold it until you meet the conditions for release of the equipment from seizure. So section 1 is that amendment to the home improvement fraud statute. First, it divvies up the definition of home improvement to provide a specific definition of land improvement. So it moves the pruning and limbing, it moves that down into land improvement. Home improvement is now going to be about those activities that relate to the building or the structure. And land improvement is going to be about those activities away from the structure. So construction, replacement, installation, paving, and improvement of driveways, trails, roads, or other landscape, site work, excavation, irrigation, site utility preparation, limbing, pruning, cutting, or removal of trees, and forestry operations. And forestry operations is defined in 10 VSA 2602 as any activity related to the management of forests, including timber harvest, pruning, planting, reforestation, pest, disease, and invasive species control, wildlife habitat management, and fertilization. So forestry operation and timber harvesting is now specifically an activity that the AG or state's attorney could address underneath home improvement and land improvement fraud.
Representative Wilson.
Does that apply to a landowner that's logging on his land or just to loggers?
No, it's not. That's a great question because that brings us right to subsection B. Because a person commits the offense of home improvement or land improvement fraud when the person enters into a contract or agreement with an owner for home improvement or land improvement when it's over $1,000, or if it's an aggregate contract, $2,500 or more. and the person then knowingly fails to perform the contract, when the owner requests performance, payment, or fails to refund payment, fails to make and comply with a definite plan for completion of the work, or fails to make the payment. So this is that subdivision B3 on line 18. That relates to when a harvester enters into a contract with the homeowner, landowner, for the harvest, and then that contract relates to what the landowner will be paid for the value of that timber. And so if that is not complied with, the harvester does not pay the landowner for the value of the timber that is sold, then that's potentially land improvement fraud underneath the statute. So most of the rest of this statute remains the same. But one of the important parts of it is that when a person is convicted of home improvement or land improvement fraud, they have to notify the AG. The AG the court notifies the AG, and then the AG puts that person's name on a registry of persons who've been convicted of home improvement or land improvement fraud. So if you're looking for a contractor to do work for you, home or land, you can go to this registry and see if they've previously been convicted of home improvement or land improvement fraud.
Representative Levitt?
Quick question. They have to self-report?
They have to self-report.
That's a glitch, isn't it?
No, because if they don't, then they're subject to criminal penalty, which we'll get to in a minute.
Okay. That's okay.
So it's intentional.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's get to the criminal penalties. That's in subsection D. So a person that commits one infraction where the loss to the consumer is less than $1,000 is imprisoned not more than 2 years or fined not more than $1,000 or both. If they're convicted of a second or subsequent offense and they are then imprisoned not more than 3 years or fined not more than $5,000 or both. And then if they committed one violation and the value is more than $1,000 or the loss to more than one consumer is more than $2,500, then it's 3 years and $5,000. And then if they have of a second or subsequent violation of sub 3, then it goes to 5 years and $10,000. But then you'll see line 10, a person who violates subsection C, which is the requirement to report, or subsection D, which is the requirement, hold on a second, to provide, subsection E, which is the requirement to provide financial surety. If they fail to do that and engage in in home improvement or land improvement work, they're subject to imprisonment of not more than 2 years and a fine of not more than $1,000 or both. So they have to report to the registry and they have to provide the surety if they want to continue to engage in these activities. Then you get to the surety requirement. If you're convicted, if you want to continue to work, you can continue to work in one of two ways. The first is that you're working for a company or individual that is also engaged in that work. The company's not previously committed land improvement or home improvement fraud. The person has no relation, the person working has no relation to the company personally or in its corporate form. So you can't be like, oh, I'm owner X. I get convicted of home improvement fraud or land improvement fraud. I just reorganized my company and now my son is owner Y and I am working for that company because my son has not been convicted of home improvement fraud. No, it's like you have a personal or company relationship to that entity in its corporate form. This does not apply to you. The second way that you continue to operate is you give the Attorney General a surety bond or a irrevocable letter of credit of not less than $50,000. So this is basically to ensure that if you are engaged in these activities and you commit fraud again, that there is money available to pay for the damages of your fraud.
Representative Rich, did you have a question?
Yeah, is personal relationship defined?
It is not defined.
Representative O'Brien?
Like, what happens in a case where the landowner signs a contract and it has, small print or some other devious, but they don't see, and so the fraudulent logger, follows the contract, but it's really that logger's contract.
Yeah. So you can either argue it misrepresents a material fact relating to the terms of the contract, or uses or employs in any unfair or deceptive act or practice in order to induce, encourage, or solicit such person to enter the contract.
Representative Graham?
So sounds like this would protect the person that has hired somebody to do the work. What about the adjoining landowner, the logger, it's up in the woods, you can't see it. And finds some nice trees on the other side of the property line.
That's why there's still the timber trespass law, because that's not that activity you just described is not under a contract. That's just somebody taking trees without the consent of the property owner. That remains a violation, but not under home improvement fraud or land improvement fraud. It would be underneath timber trespass. And this bill tries to bulk up the consequences of timber trespass so that if there's really what it is if there's one enforcement provision underneath the timber trespass laws in this bill where someone's equipment is seized, you're going to have a ripple effect in the community about, hey, I really need to be concerned about that and to engage in activities that don't trigger that. Which leads you to seizure, which is on for home improvement fraud and for the timber trespass is going to be implemented in the same way. It's going to be implemented through the current seizure authority for seizure of drug property and drug paraphernalia, because there is an entire system that is set up for that. And this bill would not be the first time that authority, that process is used for non-drug property. It can be used in animal cruelty cases as well to seize animals. And honestly, it is used in animal cruelty cases to seize animals, and those animals are seized underneath the drug enforcement seizure provisions.
Are there any legal arguments against that seizure system?
There's policy arguments against it.
Okay.
Constitutional argument?
That's what I mean.
Well, you need due process. The property owner has to have due process when their property is taken from them. And the drug seizure statute has a significant process built into it, including allowing for anyone that has a financial interest, such as a bank or a mortgage, et cetera, to assert their interest in it, and to basically be subordinate in any sale of that property.
Like a lien situation.
Yes.
Okay.
But the policy, and we'll get to the policy arguments in a minute, because let's talk about the timber trespass. Well, before we go to timber trespass, on page 7, line 3 through 7, there's this concept known as debarment under state contracting, that if the General Assembly, designates that a certain action disqualifies that person from future state contracting, then there's a list called the debarment list of people that cannot contract with the state and or receive financial assistance from the state. So page 7, line 3 through 7 says a person convicted of home improvement or land improvement fraud is barred from receiving state grants or from contracting directly or indirectly with the state for a period of up to 3 years. So they would be added to the debarment list.
That's new for home improvement then.
That would be new for home improvement as well. And then you get to timber trespass. Remember, we discussed what timber trespass is. You'll see the financial surety that is required. Under one or more of the following circumstances, a person engaged in timber harvesting compensation shall be subject to the surety. Now, remember, a timber harvest violation is when you knowingly or recklessly remove the timber of another without their permission. So that's effectively what knowingly or recklessly. This is not somebody that accidentally did it. They either knew they were doing it or they were acting in such a way that they were aware of the consequences of their actions. So this isn't just somebody that inadvertently cut down or the boundary was marked the wrong way and they cut down a tree. This is somebody that knew or should have known of the consequences of their action. So if they are convicted of a second or subsequent violation of timber trespass, so you get a get out of jail free card before you have to do surety under timber trespass. One violation, no surety. Second violation, yes, you have to provide financial surety. 2 or more civil judgments. So say there wasn't a criminal enforcement action, but you have 2 civil judgments against you, or you're subject to the financial surety requirements of land improvement fraud, or you're convicted of 1 violation of land improvement fraud, and you're not required to have surety under that because there are situations where you would not, and you are convicted of 1 timber trespass violation. So basically, if you are subject to home improvement or land improvement surety, or you do 2 violations of timber trespass or a combination of timber trespass or home improvement fraud, you have to post financial surety under the timber trespass chapter.
Mike, sorry to interrupt, but are you, what you just finished saying, current law or what we're looking at?
This is all new.
Okay.
This is all new under timber trespass. Again, like with home improvement and land improvement fraud, you get to continue operating if you're working for that company, that you don't have that personal or corporate relationship with. Or you provide the Attorney General that financial surety of a bond or letter of credit of not less than $50,000. That letter of credit may be released. It's the same way that it would be released under land improvement fraud. When any claims against a person have been paid, there are no pending actions against a person for timber harvesting or land improvement fraud, and the person has not engaged in timber harvesting activities for at least 6 years and has signed an affidavit so attesting. So this, once you're in surety, you're going to be in surety for 6 years.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
Mike, this happened on our farm, but I can see it happening a lot more. If somebody, a sugar maker, crosses a boundary and taps 10 or 10,000 trees on somebody else's property, not knowing that, or perhaps knowing that, is that timber trespass?
Technically, yes, it is. because the way that it's you remove, injure, damage, or carry away any timber or forest product. So, yes, forest products means pulpwood, veneer, bollwood, wood chip stub, pilings, biomass, fuel wood, or bark. But then when you look at forestry operations, it potentially could include maple. But you're damaging the tree as well. So it's technically covered.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, the product they're taking away is sap. The potential damage has to do with bacteria or degrading the resilience or the health of the tree.
Okay.
So again, there's a seizure. If a person commits timber trespass, property used in the commission of the alleged trespass can be seized. Person convicted is prohibited from applying for, and then you have the debarment provisions. What is not here is all the specifics about the procedure for seizure, because it's set out in Title 18, it's set out underneath that drug authority. I can walk you through that at some point, but I didn't bring that language with me today.
Yeah, I think it might be to look and dig into that a little bit. Yeah, not today.
I will also note that the Judiciary Committee, they'll want to look at anything that addresses seizure or authorizes seizure. So you'll probably get some input from them. It'd be worthwhile to talk with them about that. Now let's talk a little bit about the practicality of seizure. This equipment is big.
Yeah.
It's not like you're picking up, a suitcase of dime bags. It's $100,000 multi-ton piece of equipment. I mean, I think like the cheapest harvester you can buy is like $120,000, something in that range, and that's new. And so,
Or 700,000.
right, I mean, there's the big one, but then there's the little one that you can attach to your front of your John Deere, right? Right.
You aren't going to be stealing a lot of timber with one of those. Your point is starting it, because on a computer screen, nothing will function unless you have the code to get into the.
Or how are you going to seize the equipment? You're going to need a flatbed, right?
It costs you $5,000.
Right. Who's going to do that?
Pay for it.
Who's going to order that? I mean, so seizure, it is a significant consequence. And again, any law enforcement entity can utilize it. But it may not be utilized that often because of the difficulty with this type of equipment. It's just a practical reality. I felt you need to have that understanding. But once it happens, and the industry is aware that it could happen, that'll be a big deal.
I want to be sure that we have time to finish walking through the bills.
So the rest is really just amending the drug seizure and forfeiture authority to be clear that property seized under land improvement fraud or property seized under timber trespass is subject to the forfeiture provisions. Similarly, this is just a bootstrapping that a violation of home improvement or timber trespass, criminal trespass or civil trespass is also subject to it. And then just some conforming amendments, one of which I love is like, instead of, I had to add this, when applicable, the facts upon the forfeiture is requested and the description of the property subject to forfeiture and the type of quantity of regulated drug involved. Well, there's no regulated drug involved in the seizure here, so I had to say when applicable. And that would have been a huge loophole.
If you'd reopen, okay.
Yeah. And then just a couple of other conforming. And then section 6, this is a condition of operation. So people that are under who have committed timber trespass or home improvement fraud in the past and are, if they are going to continue to operate, they need to file that surety bond or letter of credit if it is applicable to them. So some people are going to say this is an ex post facto assessment of a penalty. No, this is prospective. This is going into the future. If you want to continue to operate and you impose conditions, the General Assembly proposes conditions on operation of entities all the time. If you want to continue to operate going into the future, you need to comply with the surety requirements if they apply to you. And the AG sends letters to those notice to those persons that are subject to the surety under this provision. And the act takes effect on July 1, 2024. You probably want to talk to the Attorney General. You probably want to talk to the Department of Forests and Parks. You probably want to talk to those in the forest products industry.
Thank you, Mike. We are going to be hearing from all of those people, some of them tomorrow. Representative Levitt, you had a question.
Oh, I guess it's a silly question. What happens to a seized piece of equipment? Where does it go? And what happens to it?
Well, where does it go? I don't really know where it goes. I think that will be worked out the first time the equipment is seized, but we did talk about that. It's like, do you take it to like a state highway garage, or do you take it to a local mill that's willing to store it there? But that's gonna, I think, be worked out depending on where it's seized and how big it is.
Right.
And then there's this whole process that goes through the person that's the property. They have the ability to go and have a hearing, whether or not it should be seized or not, whether or not they need it for necessity, whether or not it actually belongs to somebody else. And then the court reviews that and determines whether or not it should be seized. And then if there is that seizure, then there's the what's called the forfeiture, where a provision where the state can sell that equipment for value, pay anyone that has a lien or any other financial interest in it off, and then the state gets to keep it. Which that's the part that I did not know, that the state kept the money, but the state keeps the money.
Does the law enforcement agency retain any money?
There's a divvying up of what's left over and where it goes.
Could some of the money not go back to the town where the infraction happened?
I mean, if you wanted to do that, you could do that, but
There's an existing seizure statute, this subject.
It has the, okay.
right.
Yeah, so let's have you come back in and if interesting, find some backup to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's see, first Representative Lipsky.
So with regard to this seizure and the ownership issue, let's take a piece of equipment that costs several $100,000. Most of those pieces of equipment are have a lender involved, Armed Credit Ease, Caterpillar, or John Deere Finance. and it's brought to an auction house and there's still an outstanding debt of several hundred thousand and their highest bid is 100.
So before forfeiture, the entities that have that interest can make that claim to the court during the seizure review and become first in priority if there is going to be, or they can assert that they actually own it and that is their piece of property.
That's my point, because I've watched things go for low numbers at an auction when there was already title, a lien on the title for many times that amount.
Why don't we, let's see, Representative Templeman, you had a question?
Yeah, so with the surety,
About seizure.
no, surety bonds. Yeah, so concerning the surety bond, in other states, there are third parties who can take the position of posting that bond. That sort of would take the teeth out of this. Is there a way to prevent third parties from being the posting agent?
I don't know. I think I'd have to look at that a little bit more because a bank is a third party, right? And so a bank could provide a letter.
Yeah, I mean, like a bond agent where like you maybe give a certain portion of the amount to the bond company and they post the rest on your good credit, for example.
I don't know the answer to that. I have
Okay.
to look at that.
That's the case in California with general contractors.
When we get back together to talk about seizure, maybe just better understanding surety. And maybe thinking about what happens currently with home improvement fraud. Thinking through an example might be helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's let you go then, Mike. Thank you for walking us through that bill, and we will be returning to it later this week.